package has an open rate of 100%, meaning nobody can resist finding out what the lump in that package might be. So I'm going to kick it over to Tony. Should therapists, PTs, OT, should they be?
I want to go to, quite literally, my mailbox. And I think I shared this in a DM with you guys, but so this is an organization, I won't say who, but I think understood the assignment. And this is a direct mail piece that I got in my mailbox like 2 days ago, and I was captivated. I don't know the last time someone said I got a thing in the mail and I was captivated by it, but I'm going to show it on camera and I'll talk you through it. And then I want to hear what we can do in terms of spinning it to physical therapist practice owners. Here's the letter. It is a plain white envelope. That's it. It just has my name and address on it. I'm not really covering anything up besides my name and address. You can send me a letter if you want. And in the top right-hand corner, it's got like the details about postage. And in the top left-hand corner, right, where the return address is a barcode. But it was these 3 words that really, really confused me. Do not bend. So number one, off the bat, when you see this, can you figure out who it's from or what it's about? You guys are like, Sherlock Holmes. No idea. I had no idea. But of course, the do not bend completely captivated me. What's in it that I can't bend, right? Like I had to know. Before I even got halfway up the driveway, I've got the other mail under my arm and I'm doing this and I'm opening it up. And the reason I point this out before we reveal who it was and who had a great brand strategy, and I gave them kudos on LinkedIn, I will say they understood the assignment of the envelope. They understood the assignment of the YouTube thumbnail. They understood the assignment of the email subject line, which is to get you to open the envelope, open the email, or click the video for the first 3 to 5 seconds. So I'll stop there. I don't want to go too fast.
Open it with attention. You can. We all open envelopes. We rip open envelopes, but you have attention. You had significant attention on it. You might have been walking up the driveway, but you were still serious about it because do not bend in your head and in our heads will be something like, it's important. What is this? A legal letter? Am I getting sued? Right. Is it something fragile? What do you think, Tony?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think it's one of those things you immediately think it's important. There are some direct marketing guys, Joe Polish, Dan Sullivan, Dan Kennedy, like this is right out of their playbook. I used to listen to their podcast all the time. There are some really, really great strategies. I'll hear the rest of Jimmy's part, but I'll talk about a couple of the things that we had done, we had tried, that I had seen. Really cool stuff you could do with direct mail.
Yeah. So Dave had it right and Tony had it right, which is this made me not only open it, but like I was dying to open it. I opened it first. I couldn't wait to open it. Like when's the last time you said that outside of like knowing you're getting a check in the mail, right? Couldn't wait to open it. So
it's the version of a Super Bowl TV commercial versus a TV commercial any other night of the year. People will tune in just to watch the commercials.
Right. So I rip it open and inside it is a brand that I've interacted. So this is a reactivation campaign. So I'm on a list because I was a customer within the last year for this brand. And it's a pretty big brand, right? So this is actually what was on the inside. So they understood the assignment too, because they wrote, bam, 18 free meals. This is HelloFresh. Had the outside of the envelope looked like the inside, right? That's an ad. And I've seen the outside of an envelope look like that. I would have looked at it and been like, oh yeah, maybe, right? But I've already talked about it 15 times, 3 times with you guys. We're talking about it on a live stream, talked about it on phone calls. I talked about it on LinkedIn because and here's what I want to do. I want to undercomplicate this. The reason this is so brilliant is because it's simple. And I think I see most people overcomplicating, trying to communicate with people. But the brilliance is do not bend because of all the things that Dave and Tony said. But could you imagine being in a marketing meeting with 20 other marketing geniuses at HelloFresh and your pitch is the Seinfeld pitch? It's the anti-pitch. It's the show about nothing, right? It's nothing. And hopefully whoever was bold enough to do this, I guess I'm just showing my address on the stream from now on. Whoever was bold enough to do this, I hope they get a raise because and again, you can't measure open rates of envelopes that are sent in the mail. But my guess is this is higher than anything else they did in the last year.
they'll have you flagged in their system, whatever they use, Salesforce or whatever, HubSpot, whatever. Like if you eventually in the next several weeks or months or whatever, if you start paying, even if you don't use a code from that,
right.
They know they have your name, your address in their system. And if you start paying for meals again in the next 3 weeks or 3 months or whatever, then they can attribute probably the reactivation of you as a customer to this campaign. And now you might get we got to follow up in like a month or so. We got to ask you if you get other things in the mail from them that are kind of tied to this, or it's probably not a one-off, but we'll have to see.
And just so we follow up, like I'm holding on the camera, but like inside was this card with a QR code, 18 free meals plus a free tote. I get a free tote, but it's
Americans love free stuff.
Like, it's pretty beefy. So on the inside of the envelope, like they understood what are the things you can do. Well, you can feel the outside of the envelope. You can read it. You can sort of, when it says do not bend, what's the first thing we do? Oh, okay. What is this? We start to bend it.
How much can I bend it?
How much can I bend it, right? How heavy it is? Like when I get a present, I shake it. Like, what is it? It's a gerbil. Don't shake it too much. But the point is they understood the assignment, right? This is where I want to undercomplicate it, right? I was working with a company yesterday and we were looking at their email open rates that have been dropping off. And they said, well, maybe we're sending too many. And I said, hang on a second. And this is where I apply exercise principles. Frequency, intensity, time, type, volume, and progression. Those are exercise principles. That's the FIT VP principles. And I said, instead about frequency, let's go with quality, right? Like, is the quality of the email been dropping over the last couple of months? And maybe that's why people who have opened it aren't opening the later ones. And then we looked at their subject lines because do not bend was on my mind. I said, oh yeah, I wouldn't open these emails either. I don't open your emails and I'm in your target market. So we started tweaking and we said, there's not enough time for this call. We got to come back next week and talk about your subject line because the point of the subject line is to get you to open the email. The point of the envelope is to get you to open the letter, hopefully. And I'd love to find out who this person is because they understood the assignment. Hope they get a raise because they got me and I even knew what was going on. So I consider myself, a little bit of a different consumer, right? I'm focused on like sort of the marketing and I loved it. I mean, this makes me want to do this just to make sure that person gets one little ding in their email, in her email box that goes, yes, someone do not bend, got one guy to come back to get their 18 free.
Have you guys ever heard of Anderson or Windows by Anderson or Anderson Windows? You've heard of these?
I've got Anderson Windows, yeah.
Oh, so maybe, I don't know. Is it a regional thing, New York area thing? I don't know.
Oh, I've got Anderson Windows. They're great. Like my dad's been telling me about Anderson Windows my entire life.
So Tony's never heard of them, but maybe the regional. So I got something like this. Maybe I can't remember. Maybe 1 or 2 years ago, I got a letter in the mail, and now is a different approach, a little bit different. It was a similarly blank front envelope, but the envelope was a colored envelope. So it was like the legal size, but it looked like it could have been like an invite to a friend's wedding, or I don't know what it was, but the envelope was I think it was like light green. And the font that they used on the front of that was not the regular Arial or, Times Roman font. The font was like a script font. It looked like someone had handwritten it. Right. So I did the same thing. I did the same thing as Jimmy. We get the mail and it's a bunch of white envelopes that are asking for our time and we don't care about it. Right. But I see this green envelope. I pick it up and I'm inspecting it like Jimmy did, and I rip it open, and it's a pitch for Anderson Windows, which we've never used before. And then I was like, oh, it's just Anderson. Like I'm not in the market for those windows. That will absolutely get the attention of a ton of customer or potential customers. But that's another thing for potential therapists and practice owners to try, like whether it's snail mail like this, which I know costs a little bit. It's going to be like $1 or more per envelope. You could send things like this to your past patients because Tony talked about the most profitable marketing strategy is a reactivation campaign in physical therapy. And so I've actually been thinking recently of sending mailers to our previous patients or current patients and potentially even the folks that call in, because usually we talked about the phone call process. We usually get their address. Right. We would have to maybe find online their apartment number or whatever, but we could start mailing things to these prospective patients' homes like this. And then inside is like an offer, or the inside is, diagnostic imaging or whatever. And it could be for people that called us and didn't convert, or they're busy, or we're trying to reactivate them because they used to work with us, whatever.
All right, Tony, let's go to you with things that you've done, things that I like failures too. I like successes. And then we can just sort of spitball for a hot minute before we go to the next topic in terms of like, okay, how do you bend and twist and remix, do not bend? So what's something you've done, because you've done this, you've put your money where your mouth is. What's worked, what hasn't worked?
Yeah, so now this is going back to 2001 to 2006. We just started the practice. We're growing. We have a very kind of finite community. We're on an island in Sarasota. We know all the houses, about 8,000 residents off season, about 20,000 residents in season. So I made a list of a couple things while you guys were talking. So I used to do this thing for a lucky penny. So imagine you take a standard envelope, do a little promotional thing inside, but then you tape a penny or glue a penny to the letter. You put it in the envelope, and what you do is you actually press around the edges of the penny on the outside of the envelope. So the person who gets the envelope can see the indentation and knows that there's a coin in there. And we would do stuff, and we would try different things like a lucky penny inside or a penny for your thoughts or whatever. We ran a campaign where we just put random pennies in there. We did that pressing, and then we would have the person try to look up the value of the penny. But within all of that, obviously, we would talk about the value of your health and how valuable your health is and how precious it is and how you need to work on maintaining it, protecting it. A penny invested in your health will pay dividends for the rest of your life. Like, that was one direction. We did something similar. What?
How did it work?
Most of the people would be like, oh yeah, I remember I got a thing in the mail. I wouldn't say there was a high conversion rate, but one or two clients out of maybe 100 or 200 we sent. We never did 5,000 mailers. We just couldn't afford that. But typically anytime we did something like this, we would get one or two people who would come in. Another one was, I'll pay you to read this. It was written across the top of the outside of the envelope. I will pay you to read this. And when you opened it, there's $1 that was either paper clipped or whatever to the letter, and then the letter. And the same thing, the letter was just an introduction. Hey, we're new to the neighborhood. We're a physical therapy provider. Actually, at that time, we were personal training more than physical therapy, but we gave them the option to get in shape, lose weight, feel, revived again, all that kind of stuff. I don't remember. It was copywriting that I borrowed, air quotes borrowed, from some of the main copywriters at that time. We did a thing with a fish. So it was like a thin film that was shaped like a fish. And if you put it in your hand, it was a fortune-telling fish. That's what it was. You put it in your hand, the heat of your hand would cause the fish to curl up in different patterns. And depending on the pattern, you would read responses. So like ask the fish a question about your health, and then the fish would curl. And then one of the answers might be, talk to a physical therapist, just corny stuff. The last one was, it was a wooden coin. We had ordered 500 of these wooden coins. Oh, yeah. It was a pretty funny saying on the coin, but I can't remember what that saying was. And it was just another thing we can put into an envelope. It had bulk, it had volume. When somebody receives it, they could feel that there was something in there. We're not doing these things today, so they weren't as effective as I would have liked them to be, but they did help get the ball rolling when we were just getting started.
Well, these are the sorts of things, and I'll tell you what the social translation of these things are. These are the sorts of things you can't do all the time because you can't tell the same joke all the time, right?
Right.
You'll take the wind out. These are pickup lines. That's what these are. Like, do not bend got my attention. Excuse me, could you tell me how much a polar bear weighs? If I say that to a girl and she goes, what? Enough to break the ice. Hi, I'm Jimmy. Nice to meet you. I've zigged and zagged. She's doing this, which I'm 1 for 1 on that pickup line, by the way. But it's a pattern disruption, right? Really, really good marketers understand the goal is to, again, undercomplicate it, right? The goal of the pickup line is not to get married. I'm still not married. I haven't figured it out yet. I'm the only guy on the show not married. But the goal of pickup line isn't to get married. The goal of pickup line is to talk for 10 minutes. And the goal of talking for 10 minutes is to maybe get coffee in a week, The goal of coffee in a week is this is all test drive, right? This is building a relationship. This is PR, public relations 101. And I got to learn public relations from a Franciscan friar. I told you guys this before, right? Like the brown robe, the rope around his waist. So everything was super basic. Brother Basil wasn't flashy. And I hated that while I was there because I wanted to be slick and cool and da-da-da. But what I actually got was all of the basics because public relations isn't slick. It's the words in the name. It's building a relationship with the public. HelloFresh took a shot with Do Not Bend. That lands for me. Like psychographically, not demographic, not 44 years old and living in this zip code and this income. That's demographics. Psychographically, that works for me. They understand their customer, in my opinion. And this plays for me. This might not play for my dad, right? But this plays for me. So they understand your assignment. Your wooden nickel, like that's kind of cool. So now let's just spitball before we move on. Because this is nice, right? This is a cool little case study and examples. But how might you use this? I brainstormed sort of an idea with myself of how could you use Do Not Bend in your health practice, in your PT practice, in your OT practice, anything. I had this idea that we never fully executed before. But if we take Dave's Anderson windows, I always wanted to invite reactivation patients to a combine. Now, I was working for like a really sports-focused clinic when I first got out of PT school. A lot of CrossFit athletes, triathletes, a lot of spandex, a lot of spandex and tight apparel. Picture that, right? Turf floor. And what I wanted to do is come up with like 8 or 9 events, like the NFL Combine, because the NFL took this thing that was super stupid boring, right? Testing these players. And then now it's prime time. Like they made testing athletes important and they made it fun. Could you do that for, your potential patients? So it's like, come up with a bunch of events that you could do in clinic that you could do in 30 to 45 minutes, do it on a night or two, be like, we're doing the combine this week. It's Tuesday and Thursday between these hours. You come, give us your registration number that you got in your mailer or your email. Now it feels personal. We're going to rank you across these 8 domains, and then we're going to use some math magic, and we're going to rank you against people in your gender and your age to see where you fall. Understanding how fast you run the 40 is cool. Understanding that you're the fastest guy in your zip code that ran the combine this year at that, I thought was cooler because if you're like, well, I want to play rugby or I want to play, co-ed soccer, how do I get faster? Right this way. So for me, it was this combine idea of make it fun. If you tell me you're all about movement, make an event where I can come and move and you can rank me and rate me and make it feel about me. Do Not Bend was about me. And that's why I think it was successful. How could we twist this? What's an idea from each of you to twist this?
Dave?
So real quick, we're talking about lumpy mail or lump mail. And if we didn't kind of term it before, but this is like a marketing term. And marketers, I just Googled lumpy mail. So marketers claim lumpy mail package has an open rate of 100%, meaning nobody can resist finding out what the lump in that package might be. So I'm going to kick it over to Tony. Should therapists, PTs, OT, should they be, I don't know, like, can they insert something like, I mean, it's pretty cheap. If you do $1 or 1 or 2 pennies, that's pretty cheap. I don't know. I'm spitballing here as well. Should they cut a TheraBand apart and throw that in there? I mean, it's going to
look at that.
The heavier the item, obviously it's going to cost you more. I think a penny or 2 or a quarter, because then it's bigger. I think that's pretty smart. But it needs to tie into, like you guys are kind of both saying, it needs to tie into what you want them to do. So the thing of like a pennies, like, I would, or 2 pennies. And it's something like, I would love your 2 cents on whatever, like, and it could be on, hey, we're looking to, I don't know, we're looking to invest more in our therapy practice. And we're looking to buy either this thing or this thing, the Ultra-G or the Shockwave or this, or I don't know, like you could just spitball, but I would love for your 2 cents for you to call this number or email this back or whatever. Tony, what are some items other than the $1 or 2 pennies or a quarter, which is genius in itself? Any other lump items that will not cost the sender more than like $1.50 per envelope?
You just reminded me. So another great one we did was I went on eBay. I ordered 100. pill bottles, like the orange, kind of see-through pill bottle with the white cap, and it was child protected. And we would write a little note and put it in there about, not having to have medication and using physical therapy. And you can mail that. I mean, you just throw a label on it and shoot it through the mail. It wasn't that expensive. Like you said, I know exactly what you're talking about with lumpy mail. Any of these things, you just need to look at it, be creative. If I was a hand therapist, maybe I'd put clothespins in envelopes and mail that. Like, they love to use those clothespins. You just look around and like get really creative and have a lot of fun with this. And just for people listening, if you don't know what we mean when we say reactivation, what I would do on my clinic is, let's say year number 1, we get 400 new patients into the clinic. Those aren't all going to be great patients that I want back in my clinic, but there are going to be some. And so we had a three-tier classification. We just used red, yellow, green. We put them on a spreadsheet. I'd export it from my EMR, and I'd just be like, okay, these green ones, these are the names of the people that I absolutely want back in my clinic every chance I get. The yellow ones, I'll take them, but I probably don't deliver as much value to them, so it might not be worth me trying to get them back in. The red ones are like, absolutely not. They are not coming back to my clinic. And back in early 2000, we would literally write a letter, and a handwritten letter on a piece of paper just saying, hey, John, patient, this is Tony. It's been about 3 months since we've seen you for that rotator cuff issue you had. Usually this is about the time that some of those symptoms start to come back. I would love to hear from you. Just give me a call. Let me know how you're doing. And that's it. And I'd shoot it off in the mail. If I wanted to kind of experiment, I could do things like we're talking about here to make that letter more interesting. But usually it's just that letter, handwritten. I handwrite on the outside of the letter. And, we'd always get a call from that person. That person would always want to come back. A lot of times therapists don't realize patients feel guilty if they didn't do their stuff and now their symptoms are back. And they feel so guilty that they don't want to call you and they don't want to come back in because they feel ashamed. But if you open that door for them, be like, hey, this is totally normal. I expect people to come back in 90 days. I want to see you again. Just come on in. We'll do 1-2 sessions. It doesn't have to be 12 sessions. They always come back. Anytime we hit a dip, we'd reactivate. We'd always fill the clinic back up.
Hey, it's Dave Kittle. Are you a healthcare business owner or physical therapy practice owner who is looking to figure out your succession plan or exit strategy? We might be able to help. And in fact, we may be interested in acquiring your practice. If you're interested, you can reach out to me. Shoot me an email at dave@conciergepainrelief.com. That's DAVE@CONCIERGE painrelief.com, or you can call me at any time, 646-781-8884.